Hi, Greg Taylor here, talking about the condensing unit exercise that I want you to do. Just so you get this old Carrier R22 condensing unit that I've got here for this exercise, I want you to identify every wire that's on both the contactor, low voltage and high voltage, and on the capacitor. Make sure before you touch the capacitor that you discharge it. Take your voltmeter and put it across the terminals, basically on the voltage setting. So put a lead between the common and the hermetic, and a common and the fan side, and let the leads just sit on there for a few seconds, and that will discharge the capacitor to make sure that it's dead before you pull any wires off. What I would like you to do is draw a little diagram showing the colors and where all these wires are connected, and then you're going to go ahead and pull the condenser fan motor off of this. On most of these, it's 4 bolts that will undo. The condenser fan motor is actually attached to the shroud up here. So when you undo those 4 bolts, this will actually start to rise. One thing that will happen though is that the actual wires will run through, eventually back up into this panel. So we have to trace out how to get those wires out. So you disconnect the wires, feed them down and through, so that you're going to be able to pull this whole assembly off. Once you pull that assembly off, the next step that you can do is pull the fan blade off of the actual condenser fan motor itself. Now all of these exercises that I have, they're fairly old pieces of equipment. There's a good chance there's going to be a lot of corrosion. So you're going to need sandcloth, you're going to need some lubricant like WD-40 as an example, and in some cases you're going to need a hub puller. So I'll make sure that a hub puller is here so that you'll be able to use a hub puller on getting that fan blade off. Always a good idea to mark where that fan blade is in the shaft of the motor. You want to make sure that the depth of the fan blade is back right where the old one was. So if you have to replace the fan motor, or even if you're putting the same one back on, you'll want to make sure you get it on the same spot in here. You can definitely change the system pressures if this fan blade is in the incorrect spot. So make sure you're marking that if you're pulling that blade off the shaft of the fan itself. It's also going to give you the experience of seeing how that fan motor comes apart. You can also take the 4 bolts off that will disconnect the condenser fan motor from the actual fan shroud itself and the fan housing. So these are some of these exercises that I want you to do moving forward. Now obviously when we're done this exercise, I want it all back the way that it was, all wired back up correctly. You won't be putting on new components at this point, but at least wiring these old components back in, as well as this fan motor, putting the fan motor back on, or sorry, the fan blade back on the fan motor on the shaft. At that point, realigning and having everything else set up. So really, ideally, at the end of your class, I'd like to have it right back to the way this is, but in the meantime, you're really going to be able to totally kind of disassemble this unit to be able to see and work on different things.